you. Sir Julian Lewis.
Thank you, Dr. Murison, and I'd like to preface my remarks by saying I have a high personal regard for this minister. I'm sure that she would never personally wish to do anything unfair or politically partisan. But there are very good reasons why, when changes are made to anything to do with constituency arrangements and democratic arrangements, they are normally carried out under the authority of an impartial body. And I believe, and I suspect my colleagues on these benches also believe, that if a body like, for example, the Boundary Commission had been in charge of this particular operation, the results would have been very different, because a coach and horses has been driven through anything to do with local, cultural, historic, and, shall we say, orientation amongst communities. All those ideas have been totally disregarded. Now, I'd like to congratulate my honourable friend for Harborough on securing the debate, but I must say to him and to you, Dr. Murison, we are going to need a much longer debate than this if we're going to do justice to the enormity of what is proposed here. My honourable friend laid out the fact that totally inappropriate areas were going to be subsumed and swallowed up by the city of Leicester. This is exactly what is happening in relation to the city of Southampton and the naked land grab of huge areas of the New Forest East constituency, wards which are known collectively as the Waterside, coupled with another land grab of wards from the Test Valley Borough Council, wards that are contained within the constituency of Romsey. And when this first was proposed, and I must emphasise this fact, it was first proposed long after the general election. It was not in Labour's general election manifesto. And yet, Labour quite rightly thought it proper to put in its general election manifesto the fact that they were going to have elected mayors and strategic authorities. But this abolition of historic borough councils, district councils and county councils, and this merging of them was nowhere flagged up in advance of anybody's vote. And the government likes to trumpet the fact that it is so strongly in favour of devolution of political power, of listening to what local people want. Well, I've got some data for the government, because ever since this outrageous proposition that Southampton should take over vast areas of my constituency, splitting the constituency, splitting the New Forest apart, tearing the Waterside away from the New Forest, to which the Waterside inhabitants have looked for hundreds of years as being part of their community. Ever since that happened, a petition online has been gathering signatures. Now, this is a relatively local issue to a part in the south of Hampshire. So you might think that if you were lucky, you might get 5,000 or 6,000 signatures to such a petition. I checked at 10 o'clock exactly this morning. There are 22,812 signatures so far, and when you take the paper signatures into account as well, I'm sure the total is well over 25,000. What sort of issue must there be for 25,000 people in a local area to say that they utterly reject the tearing apart of the New Forest in this way and its takeover by the city of Southampton, which, as we've heard in other scenarios that have been quoted earlier in the debate, is in a far worse financial position than the people who live at present under the New Forest District Council aegis are accustomed to being. I have many more points that I would like to make. I'm not going to make them out of consideration to my colleagues. I'm just going to make one final point, and that is this. We have tried, we really have, Dr. Murison, to engage in a sincere way with the government. When the original minister, the Honourable Member for Oldham West, wrote to us, he set out what appeared to be reassuring criteria. Those criteria were no duplication unnecessarily, no fragmentation unnecessarily, and that the building blocks of the new unitary authorities would be the areas covered by the existing borough and district councils, unless as an exception, there was a very strong reason for interfering with boundaries. And yet the only reasons that have been given have been vague comments about maximising economic prosperity or something like that, which you could say in justification of any change, no matter how politically outrageous. I am sure that if this minister had, as it were, full strategic authority, to make a bad pun, over this policy, we would not be experiencing what we are experiencing. There is total outrage about this matter. It needs to be put right, and I hope the government can be persuaded to think again.
Damien Hines.
Thank you, Dr. Morrison. Great pleasure to see you in the chair, and I congratulate and thank my honourable friend from Harborough for securing this important debate today. It was also a great pleasure to hear from everybody's honourable friend from Strangford. It is not the first time, Dr. Morrison, that he has come here and said, I know that Northern Ireland isn't covered by this minister, but perhaps our experience can be instructive. Well, boy, was he right today. There are two key questions, and he highlighted the importance of the first, which is why do this at all? With all the attention it will take away from other priorities at a time when we're about to have huge changes coming to the system, particularly for special educational needs and disability. The cost involved, as my right honourable friend said, the question that literally no one was asking, and the answer that was not put in the Labour manifesto. But even if you do accept that there can be reorganisation, the question is on what basis? And this plan, Dr. Morrison, in Hampshire, in East Hampshire, will break up communities, will take away local identities and put people into new artifices. In my case, in East Hampshire, taking the people of Horndean and Clanfield and Rowlands Castle and putting them into a new super council area centred on Portsmouth, and the rest of East Hampshire going into this vast area called the Mid-Hampshire Unitary Authority, and all, Dr. Morrison, all for uncertain or quite likely negative return. What does that mean in plain English? It means local people end up paying more. And the government, as my right honourable friend from the New Forest mentioned, set out clear criteria for what a reorganisation should be. A focus on sustainability of high-quality services. A minimum scale of 500,000. That number didn't come from nowhere. It was a serious piece of work done by PricewaterhouseCoopers about minimum scale to deliver services. And crucially, that the building blocks of the new organisation should be existing districts and boroughs. And it was on that basis that local leaders engaged in the process. It wasn't that they were clamouring for it. It wasn't that people, Leeds and Hampshire, were knocking down the door of MHCLG saying, please reorganise us. But they engaged in good faith in the process. Nick Adams-King, the leader of Hampshire County Council, set out a summary of conditions for change, that any new structure must be sustainable financially, operationally and democratically. It must be capable of delivering high-quality services, resilient enough to manage demand in adult social care, children's services and SEND. And crucially, it must have a balanced tax base. It must also reflect real communities and not create winners and losers by stripping growth, infrastructure and income from one area to shore up another. And I don't think I could put it any better than that. But that is not what has happened. There were in Hampshire 3 different options with different sets of rationale for them. Obviously, the fewer unitary councils, in theory, the bigger the cost savings. But Hampshire County Council and my district council in East Hampshire preferred the middle option, which was to have 4 authorities, a balance between delivering savings and reducing risk. And there has been a big disagreement about the analysis of those different options between different people looking at. And crucially, we do not know, Dr. Morrison, what the government's own analysis is of the different options for how you would carve up Hampshire and why they chose the one they did. We do know that of the different local authorities, 2 on the mainland are smaller than the 500,000 minimum. And of course, the Isle of Wight, smaller again, although of course there are unique circumstances there. We do know there are substantial costs. We do know there will be some economies of scale from things moving from a district level to a county to a unitary level. There will also be diseconomies of scale from things moving from the county level to the unitary level. And those are the biggest things. They are the things with the biggest cost pressures in our system. People worry in operation what this will mean for housing. And of course, all the local plan work that was going on was done on the basis of the existing district councils, and that now does not work. They worry about the loss of local knowledge. Parish councils are concerned about the implications for them. And crucially, there is this question about identity and cohesion. I already mentioned Horndean, Roland's Castle and Clanfield being split off into Portsmouth. Of course, it's also true, as my Right Honourable said, for parts of the New Forest and for Test Valley and for Winchester. This Minister herself has spoken in the past of how identities grow up over time. These are entities which have been in place for at least 50 years now. And of course, then other organisations start to organise themselves. Charities, other public sector organisations organise themselves around these district and borough boundaries, and it becomes inconvenient for them. If the government insists on proceeding, it needs time, it needs sober assessment for local authorities to come together to find consensus on the way forward. It is not a trivial question. It is about some of the most important things in our lives. The care for our ageing mums and dads, the care for the children with the highest needs and the highest vulnerabilities. And it is a long-term decision. This is not something which is going to have an effect for 3 years or 5 years. This is a decision which will have an effect for decades. We need to start with knowing on what basis the government made the decision they did. You can't very easily argue with it if you don't know what it is. And the letter that's already been mentioned from the 16 council leaders makes a very reasonable ask that we should know what the department's own analysis and feasibility assessment was. And so I say to the Minister simply, please show us your workings.
Peter Bedford.
Thank you. Your chairmanship, and I too would like to congratulate my honourable friend for bringing this important debate before us today and the passion in which he opened the debate. However, I wish to focus on the one issue that has filled my inbox since the proposals were first announced, and that's the government's approach to reorganisation in Leicester and Leicestershire. Chair, reorganisation must be done with the consent of local residents, a point that many honourable friends have made on this side. Unfortunately, the government, which is so enthusiastic about consultation, appears to be unwilling to give the final say to the very people that matter the most, the people that sent us to this place. Of course, some members opposite may believe that changes to local government boundaries is small fry, perhaps inconsequential. But I say to them, look at the strength of feeling from our constituents on this issue. The people of Mid-Leicestershire certainly do not believe this is a trivial issue. Many constituents from villages like Birstall tell me they left Leicester City precisely because they wanted to be part of a village community away from the hustle and bustle of city life. They said they no longer felt safe in a city increasingly associated with crime and decline. And they wanted their children to grow up somewhere they could walk safely in the streets and feel part of a close-knit community. They simply do not want to be back within Leicester City area. Similarly, in Glenfield, particularly those residents who live beside the former Western Park Golf Course, a picturesque and ecologically diverse and rich reserve, they fear that an expanded Leicester City Council would concrete over it in an attempt to push development still further out into Glenfield's green and pleasant land than repurposing the abundance of brownfield sites already within the existing City Council area. Furthermore, my constituents in Leicester Forest East and Kirkby Muxloe tell me that they fear if they are absorbed into the city, their priority, their rural priorities, will simply be overlooked in an urban-focused administration. And frankly, who can blame them? And perhaps most damaging of all, Dr Morrison, a constituent from Braunston Town, someone who already lives beside the city boundaries, told me that they had seen firsthand the decline of the city and they want nothing to do with it. My constituents should be under no illusion. I will not accept, under any circumstances, an attempt by the government to force our beautiful villages into the Leicester City Council area. And that is why Leicestershire Conservatives, as my honourable friend mentioned, launched a petition on this matter. Indeed, my honourable friend for Harborough, Oby and Wigston and my honourable friend for Rutland and Stamford presented that petition of over 10,000 petitioners from the villages that surround the Leicester City Council area. It shows the strength of feeling across our communities. And that is also why I tabled an amendment to the English Devolution Bill to ensure that before any local government reorganisation takes place, residents themselves must be consulted via referendum. That was not taken up by the government. This is because, Dr Morrison, decisions about local government boundaries should be made by local communities, not by ministers or civil servants in Whitehall who have very little understanding of the character and identities of our local communities. And let me be absolutely clear. If this government seeks to place any of the villages that I represent under the remit of Leicester City Council, I will fight tooth and nail to oppose that. And while other parties not here today are silent on this matter, I want my constituents to know that I'm on your side on this immensely important issue.